Welcome back to another episode of Trading Secrets. Today we are joined by Bachelor Nation fan favorite and reality TV personality, one of my favorites, Wells Adams. When it comes to making a career out of being on reality TV, Wells has truly made the most of his opportunities. Working as a radio DJ in Nashville, Wells won over fans by competing on Jojo Fletcher's season of The Bachelorette. He was later a contestant on Bachelor in Paradise. Although he did not find love throughout his time on either shows, a love connection did come his way with Sarah Hyland. Fast forward years later, Wells and Sarah are happily married. Wells is thriving in his recurring role as the head bartender every summer on Bachelor in Paradise. In addition to working closely with Bachelor in Paradise,
You're doing great.
In addition to working closely with the Bachelor franchise, Wells has expanded his media career by adding podcast host and TV host to his resume. The list is endless with this guy. Wells said to me, "How could I come on Trading Secrets? I don't even know what to talk about." And what I said is, how am I going to keep this under an hour? We'll be talking all about Wells' diverse portfolio of TV endeavors, podcasting, and what's coming next. So Wells, thank you so much for being on Trading Secrets.
I love that intro, and I'll tell you why. Because you said it, I was a radio host originally, and you kind of went into that is
radio host,
the new sound of Rebel Radio. Here we go, coming at you live from Nashville, Tennessee.
There is like a part of me, like back in the day growing up, I wanted to be like, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Royal Rumble. And this is the little part of my show because everything else is like so stiff and boring, and I'm not funny like you, but that's the part I get to do. And then so there's a closing bell too.
Okay.
And I get to start it. We do a recap. He'll listen to the whole episode. His name's Curious Canadian, and he'll want to know like all these things about our interview, what you're like, things I didn't ask, and we started with ding ding ding. So it's the only time I get to do that, and you got to do that most of your career.
Yeah, it was a lot of like bad radio bits and a lot of soundboards.
Yeah,
I had so many different soundboards. I used to edit calls like on the fly. I kind of miss those days of like being a true radio guy.
And that was at was it 100 Lightning in Nashville, or where was it?
Yeah, so I had my first radio show when I was 16.
Okay.
I was in high school, and my first con in the entertainment industry was I was able to convince a high school that I didn't go to let me have a radio show on their high school radio station. And I didn't go to that school.
That's hilarious.
And then I was like, oh, this is fun, because I wanted to be a musician. And I wasn't a really good guitar player, and I was a trash singer. Still am.
Could you give us like one little?
No,
like nothing. You can't.
No, but if you had a guitar, I'd play like Blackbird for you,
can't give me like
Fast
I
Car.
did it my way. Nothing.
No.
Okay. Maybe Aladdin. I'm trying, guys.
A lot more folksy. Like imagine Jason Isbell, but like can't carry a tune. That was like my vibe.
Okay.
But I wanted to hang out with a bunch of musicians, and I wanted to be one. And I realized that like my way of being able to hang out with the cool kids was to have something that they wanted to be a part of, which is a la radio show. So I went to college. I went to Ole Miss. I was a broadcast journalism major. I had a multitude of air shifts on Rebel Radio. That was I went to my Rebel Radio intro to make fun of you because it was 92.1, the new sound of Rebel Radio.
That was good.
Yeah, that was it. I did every format. I did a morning show. I did afternoon drive. I even did a late night Saturday jazz set, which I called the Old Coast Road Show, hosted by Dave Garber. That was one of my fake names. And I only played jazz. And my thought is that everyone was coming home from the bar around 1 o'clock, and they'd turn on Rebel Radio, and they would hear some smoky jazz and just bone down to it. And I was like, everyone's going to be listening to this. Come to find out, no one ever listened to that show, but it was fun to do on Saturday nights at Ole Miss.
Even this story of everything pre-show and Ole Miss and your high school, nothing at all is in any form of a blueprint. It's the definition of a mosaic, and that's like what your career is today. It's like in all different directions. There's not a specific niche. You're a bachelor guy. You're a cook. You're this. You're that. You're doing podcasts with Brandy, kind of all over the place. But it's all worked out. When you were at Ole Miss studying broadcasting and journalism, did you at all foresee or manifest where you are today? Or what's your take on that? Because some people sit down here and they're like, I had it ready to go. Yeah. I knew I was going to be here, and I'm here. And your career has taken so many lefts and rights. Did this at all become what you anticipated it?
No, I think my initial thought was, and I do this with a lot of my goals, is like once I achieve them, then it's like on to the next one. But my initial thought was, okay, get paid to be a radio host somewhere. And if I can do that, then that will be successful. And so, I graduated from Ole Miss. My plan was, because my sisters went to Vanderbilt, so I had a sister still in Nashville. My plan was to go to Nashville and try to get a radio job there because that's where they made music. So there has to be radio shows to, airing there.
Of course.
And so I went there. I was waiting tables at Bricktops on West End. My sister was like, there's this really cool indie radio station called Lightning 100, WRLT 100.1. Listen to it if you're ever in Nashville. It's a fantastic station, still is. And so I went and they had a secretary job available. So I went in and I was like, listen, I'll do this. So whatever I can do to like get in the building, and then you can hear my air checks and stuff like that. And I remember sitting down with the GM and the program director, and he was like, "Well, you're not qualified to be a secretary.
What's your Excel skills like?"
Exactly. you can't do this, but your air check is good. So
for people out there that don't know what an air check is, what is that?
Yeah, so you would have like tidbits of your radio show. You have like in TV they call it a reel, but it's basically a bunch of my air checks of like me going into songs or me coming out of songs, me reading copy, me reading, doing live callers, all the things that you need to do on a radio show, just condensed into like a 3-minute reel.
So that's what the interview is like, or do you come prepared with that to the station?
You make that beforehand.
Okay, got it.
And this was back in the days when I had brought my CD, and it was burned on my CD. I still have it somewhere. And so they were like, "You're great, but we don't have like a position for you, so you can be a board op," which is basically someone who like pushes buttons and makes sure like the live thing that's happening gets on the air. So like we broadcast Preds games at the time, the hockey team there. Cool. So I was a board op for that. We did a live show from this venue called Third and Lindsley, which is still there and is a great venue, called Nashville Sunday Night. And I would go there on Sundays and I would make sure the faders were up, and I would have like 15 minutes in between sets where I could play music and DJ.
Cool.
And so I did that. I did overnights where you just like are there overnight. All the while I was waiting tables at Bricktops and just like waiting for my opportunity. And then like with everything, like someone got fired, someone died, someone quit, people started falling off.
Attrition.
Yeah, and I started to, I was just around all the time. And so I started, I first got the night show on Lightning, which was great. And when I got that, I was also the promotions director. Someone's got to like buy the koozies and the hats and the glasses that you give out, at Bob's used car lot. So I did that. And I remember I was one of my most, to this day, of all the things I've done, one of my most proud moments was quitting my waiting tables job at Bricktops.
To be able to do that.
Yeah, because I was like, I got hired, was making $30,000 a year.
In which is a board, I was going to ask you, each of those positions, what do they pay?
So board up, I got to look back. I think I started at $8 an hour. I think I was getting $10 there at the end. And I remember I had I had to write it down like on a sheet, turn it in. I was probably making, $400 a month. So that's why I was still waiting tables. I was having to like subsidize.
Quick question there though. You go to Ole Miss.
Yeah.
It's a great school. Your family members, I've had the pleasure of meeting them. Extremely smart, done really well. You go back home or you talk to family, mom, dad, I'm going to go work for $8 an hour as a board director. Did you get any pushback? Like, Wells, what are you doing?
I think I got pushback from everyone. It was really hard for everyone to see the forest for the trees, but I was like, listen, this is fun for me. And my theos with work is like try to figure out the things that you like to do and see if you can con someone into paying you for it. And so for them, they were like, everyone was very confused. It was a lot of like, why don't you just go sell insurance or like whatever. So I think I got a little bit of pushback. I remember the hardest thing for me was all my friends who had went to Ole Miss. A lot of people moved to Nashville after Ole Miss. And all my friends had like really good jobs. And I was waiting tables and they'd come into my restaurant, which was a good restaurant, and I'd wait on them.
What restaurant was it?
Bricktops.
Oh, Bricktops. Right.
Great restaurant.
Yeah.
I was a terrible waiter. I was great with my customers, but I never remember the fucking menu. Sorry, I don't know if you can cuss on this.
You can cuss.
I never remember the menu, so I just make stuff up, this is what I still do. Like,
Which is likely what you do on Paradise.
It's what I do
as a bartender
with
now.
every part of my life. Sarah's like, I never know if anything's true or not with you. And they'd be like, "What's the Hannah Ranch ribeye?" And I'd be like, "Oh yeah, man, it's Asian flavors with pineapple." And I remember my boss coming up behind me and he goes, "Literally none of the things that you described were in that dish are in that dish."
But you're doing it with a straight face and a hand gesture.
But it was the most expensive thing on the menu, and I was like, "Who cares? I sold it." And he's like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." But yeah, it was tough for me. I remember thinking like. And it shouldn't be like this, but when you serve someone, you feel less than. And it's funny because I still serve people today on a TV show.
Do you feel less than?
I'll tell you what, man. There are people that are fucking rude on that show, and I don't give them the best advice when that happens.
Are you talking about the cast? Or are you talking behind the scenes?
No, the crew's always the most wonderful people in the world.
Okay.
But sometimes, people come in there and they're entitled and stuff, and there has to be like a little bit of a check, like, hey, I'm not really your bitch boy. Like, say please. There's been a couple of times where I'll say, "What do we say after we order something?"
Wow. We'll get into that because I have a ton of questions of the cast of Paradise and the whole entire process and the people, because it's a show I've never been on. That's a perfect tease for that. But I do want to get back quickly to $8 an hour as a board op.
Yeah.
What was the process from there, and what's the pay, like in a rapid fire scale?
I mean, yeah, so I was the board op making less than minimum wage, I guess. Or maybe at that time it was around minimum wage. And then I remember her name was Laurel. She was the night jock, and she left to go work for the mayor. I think she still does, actually. And so they were like, we needed a night jock. So then they hired me full-time, also promotions director. And I think it was $30,000 a year. Got it. Which was a lot of money for me at the time, but like it's not a lot of money to live off of in Nashville.
Yeah.
But there are ways to make more money in radio, and so I learned to be very, very good at those things to supplement what I wasn't making.
Give me an example of one.
Okay, so there are these things called what were they called? Effectively, they are live broadcasts from places. Okay. So like it's when you're like, I'm down at Bob's Used Car Lot, come on down here, check out, we got 20% off the new Kias, and grab a CD and giving away tickets to Kings of Leon. And so it's like you're cutting away to that.
Yeah.
And so, they're called remotes, excuse me. So I would go do every remote that was offered. I'd be like, I'll go do it.
What do you get paid for something like that? A couple $100?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe. And then we used to do a lot of, they weren't even on the air, they were just events. And so there was a time in which I was doing so eventually I'd work myself up to the morning show. But there was a time in which I was doing the morning show, and then on Mondays, I did a show called the 615, which was like a live show we did from a bar.
Okay.
And so I got paid to like go do a live show from this bar. Like the bar paid, they had a deal with us. And then on Tuesdays, I did a thing called Beer Bands and Bingo at Tin Roof. And I would call bingo for a bunch of drunk people and give away tickets to things. Like that's what that was.
You know the scene in Better Call Saul where he's doing the bingo with the old people at the retirement home? Like I imagine that being you with all a bunch of drunk kids.
I had so many bad bits. I was, I had one was, it was a cancer joke where I was like, don't worry, your doctor called, the mole's fine, it's B9, everybody. A lot of really bad jokes. So I did that, and then, so that was Tuesday. Wednesdays, I hosted a cornhole tournament at Fat Bottom Brewing. Thursdays I was off. Fridays I did Friday Afternoon Live, where I would do a live broadcast from a no longer pizza joint in Nashville on Music Row called Soulshine Pizza. So I get paid all extra for those things, but I still was getting up at 4:30 in the morning to get to my radio show at 5 to prep for my 6 o'clock airtime.
Jeez.
So it was a young man's game, man. Like there's no way I could do it now.
Of course.
But at that time in my mid 20s to like early 30s, unstoppable. And then I was also, going to concerts and bringing bands on stage because we were presenting the show or whatnot. So I just never slept.
It's like you are redefining, I think, the jack of all trades with each one of those things you were doing every night. All in at the pinnacle of your radio career with all those moving parts around, if you had to estimate how much.
$54,000.
$54,000. At what age? So at what age did you hit the pinnacle?
Well, from Lightning, I think $54,000 was when I tapped out there, and I bought a house in East Nashville, making $54,000 a year, really with a $30,000 salary. I bought a $220,000 house. I thought I was getting absolutely ripped over the coals, and I couldn't afford it. I was house poor on a $200,000 house. Fast forward to now, it's tripled in value. It's a great moneymaker for me. We have long-term renters in there. But yeah, I was able to do that then. And then what happened is that iHeart came and they poached me from Lightning. And so then I moved over across the street and I worked for iHeart, and at that time I did a morning show on the alt station, I did afternoon drive on the classic rock station, and I did nights on CHR, which is pop top 40. So I lived in a studio that entire time. So I stopped doing all the other things that I was doing because I just was stuck in the studio.
Okay, got it.
And so that gets you kind of, and I made a little bit more than that. I think it was around 60. With the other way that you make money on radio stations, similar to influencers these days, is through endorsements, brand deals. So same thing, I'd go on the air, make commercials. Man, I love this tummy tea or whatever it was. And so at the peak, I think I was making 60 to 70 with endorsement deals from iHeart.
Okay, I want a quick question on the radio thing, because we're going to wrap the radio thing up soon. But if someone is interested in getting into, they're really interested with what you're saying and they find this fascinating, but you talked about the hours already, right? Late night bingos to 4 a.m. starts. Yeah. Is there any way to get a side hustle job, 2-3 hours a week in the radio business today?
For sure. The problem is that radio kind of turned into what this is, right? So it's so much easier just to have a podcast than to work your way in. But when I was coming up, there was no podcasts. I remember it was hilarious because people were constantly telling me, you should do a podcast in 2015 or whatever it was. Yep. And I was like, fuck you, man. I have 3 radio shows. Podcasts are for people that couldn't school
get a
for
radio
this.
show. Yeah.
I worked a long time. I'm not going to do a podcast. Now it's funny because I only do podcasts. Dumb about that.
You would never do a radio show.
Yeah, I would never. I think people have come and be like, hey, do you want to do it? Absolutely not. Sit in the studio for 6 hours?
Out.
No way, man. But yeah, I think that it's one of those things of and we hired so many people who just were such big fans, especially Lightning, because Lightning is a very cool, hip radio station. So many people that just came there and were like, I'll do anything. What do I need to do? I'll intern. I will fold T-shirts. And then so if you feel that way about any business, go be annoying about that, and then you'll get in the door. And eventually someone will be like, I can't do my air shift today. Can you cover for me? And then all of a sudden you can build your reel or whatever it is, and you're the next Ryan Seacrest.
Just don't try and be in secretary if you have zero secretary skills.
I was not proficient at Excel or Word.
Couldn't even put a calendar invite in the system. All right, so you go from being a board op, $8 an hour. You work your way all the way up to iHeart, $60,000. The life-changing event happens for Wells. He gets asked to be on The Bachelorette. Yeah. How did they find you?
It was funny. I used to do a bit on my morning show where I would go audition for commercials, and so I would on the morning show be like, I got this Meow Mix commercial, and here are the lines, we're doing it tomorrow. And the whole bit was that I would never get the job. I would be and I would be intentionally bad, because the payoff was coming back the next day, and my co-host or intern I would be inconsolable, and they'd be like, what happened with the Meow Mix commercial? And I was like, I just forgot the lines. And they're like, it was just Meow Mix, we delivered. That was the entire line. And I'm like, I freaked out, And so I was doing this bit, and it was funny. and I had gotten dumped, and my brother who lives in LA, he is like, and you've met Brett, like he's like the best guy in the world.
He's a 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10.
Yeah. And it's funny because he's like the handsome one in our family. He was the model and everything.
He is a stud.
He's
got in a room. He's got a big presence.
Yes,
too.
he does. Yeah. And so he was at Q's, which is like, it's in Santa Monica or Brentwood area, and they actually used to film, I think, a bunch of, what's that show that everyone's talking about with Vanderpump Rules.
Okay.
In the Hills, they used to film there as well. So my brother was there, and a casting director came up to him and was like, you are like the most entertaining person in this room. Like, everyone is like hanging on your last word. Everyone loves you. Who are you? Will you come on this show? And he went through like the entire process, and kind of, you know just as well as I do that the process kind of takes a long time.
Forever.
And so by the time it was time to film, he was like, I am in a relationship with somebody, like, I'm not going to do it. But Brett, being my brother, being the person he is, he for some reason stayed in touch with this casting director for like 10 years. Wow. And so when I got dumped, he was like, hey, do you want me to call Melissa?
Melissa, she's the one who brought me out. She's great. I still talk to her.
I do too.
Shout out to Melissa.
And so I was like, oh, this would be such a good bit, like, for the morning show. And I'll bring everyone through the process of me, and I'll intentionally do bad and like not be douchey enough for a show with a lot of douches on it.
Yeah.
And so I went and did it, and I did. It's funny because I wore this exact jacket to the audition.
It's got history. That could be framed right there.
And it's funny. You can't see it. It's got all these like buttons and shit.
Yeah.
And I remember going into my interview, and they were like, "What's with all the fucking buttons on your jacket?"
What do you work at TGF?
Yeah.
Right?
And I was like, "Well, it's my 14 pieces of flair." And just to see, I was like, "Does anyone watch Office?
Yeah.
And then I got annoyed, and I was like, well, this one's a band, this is a taco because I love tacos, this is, and I kind of was like, this is cool, you guys don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I went to that audition, and I was wearing all denim because I had just finished a radio show, and I had another one coming up, and I wasn't gonna get all dressed up, and I wasn't really trying to get the role of being on The Bachelorette. And I remember walking in, and everyone, I don't know if this was your experience, but everyone was wearing suits, as if like this is what they're going to wear when they get out of the limo.
Like a suit and tie?
Yes.
Wait, what? How many people were there?
There were probably like 20 people. It was like in the lobby of a hotel.
Yeah.
And so I walked in, and I was like, oh, off to a blazing start. Not even wearing what I'm supposed to be wearing right now.
But that'll be a good story on the morning show tomorrow.
Exactly. Which it was. Yeah. It was like hilarious. And so I went up and I did the audition, which is kind of similar to like this vibe of like you go in this small little hotel room, they've got a bunch of cameras on you, and they were like, all right, so who are you, and like what do you do? And I was like, I'm a radio DJ. And so they were like, okay, then do your radio bit. And so that day I remembered what my bit was that morning, still do, it's funny, solid bit, and I did it for him, and I had these two women like dying laughing, and I had a heart out.
How long was the bit?
Well, the bit that I did, I know exactly what it was. It was, take yourself back to 2016 or whatever this was. Justin Bieber was in some trouble, in some hot water, because he went and peed in a bucket in like a restaurant somewhere. And like it was like all in the news that Justin Bieber peed in this bucket. How dare he just go to the bathroom and all this stuff. So the bit was taking it from the perspective of the bucket, like, man, I've seen some shit, but like, what a day. Justin Bieber gave me a golden shower. Like, whoa, man, like, today's the day.
When they die laughing?
Yeah, and I was like, and boy, did he have a nice cock. And like, you know, like,
that's unbelievable.
I look up and all of a sudden Justin Bieber's just shining down upon me, raining down excellence. And so I was doing that bit for them. So that was the thing. And then I remember being like, I have a heart out because I have to do my afternoon drive show. And so I look at my watch, and all of a sudden like 45 minutes had gone by, and I had just been like chit-chatting with these women. And I was like, guys, I got to go. So sorry, you know. And that's when they were like, so are you busy in April and May? And I was like, oh no, like,
this is gonna happen.
I wanted to not get this thing, and so so I left, and the next thing was like trying to convince iHeart to let me go do it, because I was a personality.
You're a talent.
And I was a big personality in Nashville. I was on 3 of their flagship stations. And convincing them to go on a show where like they could kill my career so easily and letting me take off that much work and all that stuff, that was tough. But luckily, and shout out to my former boss, Dave Rossi, he like saw the potential of like
what it could do.
And my superpower on that show was because of the years of radio that I did. I constantly at that time, not anymore, lived in a state of self-editing. Because you can't, the FCC will absolutely destroy you if you say anything really bad on the air.
Sure.
And so I remember my boss was like, you'll be fine. Just every time a camera's on you, you're in the studio. The mic is...
FCC
yeah,
in your head, 24/7.
Exactly. Like, the red light's on, the mics are hot, you're on the radio. And I was like, this is good advice. And so I went there, and I never was problematic when I knew I could have been. And the other thing that I was able... My other superpower in the whole thing was, when I was a radio host, I was the talent, yes, but I also was the guy who booked my guests. I also was the tech who set up all the microphones and everything. I also was doing all the research and was also producing my own show and editing
the whole
doing
thing,
everything.
start to finish.
So I was able to kind of see how this thing was being made, and like be able to step back and be like, okay, so I think I can understand storyline here of like who everyone is, and to make sure that like you don't all of a sudden become a villain because you say something stupid or whatnot,
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge, huge leg up. Having all of that before the scenes. I was literally a banker. I didn't even know what the show was. I knew nothing. I remember one time me, you, Sarah, Caitlin had dinner, and I was just asking you questions about the TV business because I was so aloof to it. And Caitlin's like, shut up. Like, you know this. I'm like, no, I really don't. I find it fascinating. One quick story is you went in with your flair. I went in. I just had all black on with a black button up. And I had to do this thing. My whole thing is they're like, what's your favorite animal? And I said, lions. They go, why? I go, because I know every song. I know every word to every song in Lion King. They throw me a pillow and they say, do your thing. And I just went up, and I did the whole thing. They were dying laughing. But I'll never forget, I got on the show and then I go to the hotel days before they're going to film, and Alon Gale comes in. Mm-hmm. Kind of felt like you. I got a little chirp there. He looks at me, he goes, you look different. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, I don't know. I feel like I could work with this. Yeah. And I go, did you not feel that before? And he goes, not at all. Yeah. He goes, you know what? That whole outfit, remember that black shirt you had on? Because I just saw the video, and that black, let's just burn it all. We'll start fresh, and now you're in a good spot. I'm like, Jesus, this place is cutthroat. Oh, yeah. It's unbelievable. But when you go back to iHeart, they go back and forth. They say, okay, you can go on. Act like the red light's always on. Yep. Be aware. Did you get paid while you were on the show, or did you have to take vacation? And when you stopped filming and came back, did you immediately jump right back in your role?
Yeah, so I fought to have paid leave because in my mind, I was enhancing the brand of iHeart by being the radio host for iHeart on a nationally televised show. And I, to this day, think I had a good argument. But they were like, no, we're not going to pay you while you're gone. I'm like, all right, fine. So I had to take a leave of absence. And when you go on The Bachelor, you know how you could be for 3 days or it could be 2 months. Yeah. So I took my leave of absence. Well, I think what I did is that I took all of my vacation days for the first 2 weeks. Because I was like, I think I'll probably make it 2 weeks. And then everything after that will be
2 weeks. That's what I felt.
Well, and then it became like a war of attrition. It was just like, let's just see how long I can stay on this thing.
Please.
One more day. Stay on this. I want to go to Argentina. Because I knew Jojo did not like me.
But that's also, by the way, anyone who watches the show, that is the mindset of almost every person that's on there.
Absolutely.
What do I do to survive another minute, another day? Yeah. And some of the motive might be fame. Some of the motive might be a TV screen time. It might just be like, this is fucking cool. I don't want to go home. But everyone does that. It's just, how do they do it? And emotionally, how do they react? That either puts them in a complete catastrophic situation where their alphaness is just blowing everything up, or they're skating by and getting a couple trips.
Well, for me, and the thing about The Bachelorette is it's competitive. Like, it is someone's leaving every week, like someone's losing and someone's winning, like every week. And
I compare it to Survivor.
Yeah.
And you have to ally up with people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you got to figure out, like, for me, I was like, okay, what's my role here? Because it was pretty evident that she liked a certain type of guy, and it was like
not Wells.
And it was not me.
I watched this show,
Yeah.
and I remember, like, she liked the quarterback, the football player, and you, at least compared to the other people, that obviously wasn't you. And I'll never forget the firefighter mission. And like, you like bailed out, tapped out, and these huge jack guys are doing all of it, but she came over to you, and like, that was like your very lovable moment there. I want to talk to one thing. I always like to bring these stories back to career and financial advice, and how people back home can somehow take something away. You had to feel, and maybe you didn't, but you had to feel, at least in my eyes, some sort of imposter syndrome when you were competing against these guys, knowing you aren't what she wants, and they're these like massive dudes, all jacked for pro football players. Did you feel that?
Yeah, but I also knew that I brought something that they couldn't.
So is that how you cope with imposter syndrome? If anyone back there home, they have imposter syndrome when they walk into a conference room, they're in an interview, they feel that, what you felt. What did you do to put that aside and differentiate?
One of the biggest attributes that I like attribute to myself in terms of my success is that I have an irrational delusion about how good I am at things. And it's a way for me to cope with not getting what I want. So I go into a lot of, I have been hosting TV shows now and stuff, and I go into auditions and I don't get things sometimes. And I always, because that can really like fuck you up when you're getting no a lot. And I always would be like, I was great. I killed that. They're just not looking for this, like, me. They're looking for something else, but I killed that. And so that's on them. And I do that a lot with like everything that like is not working out. Just be irrationally delusional about how good you are at things. And for me, it's like a coping mechanism for like staying away from being depressed. Okay. And so in that particular situation, I remember being like, I'm hilarious in the interview chair, which I think I was. Like,
you are.
And I think that's why they kept me around, because they were like, hey, listen, this is my, I don't know what really happened, but this is my envisionment of what went down. Okay, Jojo, who do you want to pick this week? I want to pick Jordan. I want to pick Chad. I want to pick Chad. Or I said Chad. Chase. And they're like, well, what about Wells? And she's like, I don't know if I really like him. Like, yeah, but he's helping us tell a story in a very funny way in the interview chair, so maybe let's just keep him around.
And she's like, yeah, great.
That's how, I don't know if that's what was going on, but that's how I was like, this is how I get to hang around.
I feel like that's how the show works.
Yeah. I don't know.
Like the lead has their three people, and then they're like, the rest we have to tell the story.
Yeah. He's a great guy. Like, everyone's going to like him. You don't get rid of him yet.
Yeah.
So
were you surprised you made it to week 6, or did that seem right?
Well, it was messed up because my storyline was I hadn't kissed her yet. And that was really a symptom of I never had a one-on-one. I never really was just alone with her.
Yeah.
Because I went on every single group date except for one, and that 1 week was the week that I went on a one-on-one finally. And so I just remember being like, this is a bummer because I'm never alone with this person, like I'm never having an opportunity to kiss her. And then they kind of use that to like kind of emasculate me a little bit, which I didn't love. But looking back, it doesn't really matter.
It's a show. It is what it is. Okay, so you get off the show, and you never did kiss her, right?
No, I did. I kissed her.
Oh, you kissed her, and then she let you go.
It was so funny, yeah. So I finally kissed her. So it's actually a funny story. So we went to this thing called Fueta Brutza or something like that, and it was like performance art. It was this weird thing, and it was this pool that was like a glass bottom that lifted up in the air, and it had water in it, and they had these two people like sliding around on it, and like they were basically naked, like both wearing like thongs and Speedos and stuff. And I remember the thought of we were both watching it, and I knew that they wanted me to kiss her then.
Yeah.
When they had lowered down this
this is where pool. Your radio back editing is like, okay, this is the moment.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't know if it's gonna look super weird if I make out with her with like this guy's a nutsack like in his little banana hammock like 3 feet from my head. Like, that's a weird look. And so I was like, nope, we're not doing it right here, guys. And they're like, why not? And I was like, his balls were
Or in my
right there.
face. You're getting teabagged while you're trying to make out.
Listen, I know I'm the skinny funny guy, but come on, stop
Give me a
emasculating me.
break.
So anyways, they put me through it, but
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. And it all happened. You get out of there. You go on to Paradise, what, months later?
yeah, so they wanted me to do Paradise because I think I was like a fan favorite and everything. And I had no desire to do the show. I was done. I was like, I have a good career. I'm really proud of like what I've built. Like, this show is kind of trashy. At the time, it was kind of considered a trashy one. It might still be considered that.
Paradise, right?
Yeah.
I think it's, yeah.
My family did not want me to go on the show.
I think compared to the Bachelor, Bachelorette, it's probably a step down in that like reality realm of like the trash scale.
Yeah,
You agree?
but I
I'm not saying for the bartender. I'm saying for the cast.
No, but I also think it's the best show. Like,
It's
because
definitely
it's the
the best
funniest
show.
Yeah.
It's the most entertaining. I think it's now more watched. You might know this. Ratings are up over Bachelor, Bachelorette, I think.
I think Bachelor is still number one.
Is
I think
it?
Paradise is number two.
Okay.
But yeah, so my family really did not want me to go. I remember I was at like my sister's lake house in Texas, kind of like leading up to Paradise, and it was like an intervention. Everyone sat me down and like, do not go on this show. Like, it's not a good look. Like, you already looked fine on that show, which we weren't even sure about that. Like, you have a good job. Do not do this. And
You did it.
I did it.
Okay.
It's funny because I've had to tell this to like my family and my parents a lot. I was like, you guys have all given me very bad advice when it came to my career. They didn't want me to be a radio host. They were like, hey, go sell insurance. They were like, don't go on this show. It's trash. You know, that worked out well. Then they were like, do not go on Paradise. And I was like, I see that there's something else further down the line that you guys can't see.
I'm going to keep pushing that way. You get
so
off.
don't listen to your parents, kids. That's my advice.
Break the blueprint, guys. Anyone that's on Paradise, especially these days, is talking to you, and they're looking up to you at a level like no other because of all the success you've achieved from the show and outside of the show. But you're telling me that's not always the case. And I'm curious, from your professional standpoint, what's your observation there and why?
Well, this has always been my like credo with work, because I saw it happen long before I was on TV. But it's really, really hard to fire the guy that everyone likes in the office. And so I've always been that way. Like, and it's not to say that I'm not really a nice person, but like, it's really, really tough to get rid of somebody who everyone is pumped about seeing every day, you know? And so I try to bring that into that situation. And I tell people on Paradise that same thing. Like, it's really, really hard to be mean to you in terms of your edit or whatever if everyone likes you. You know, like, be nice to the person micing you up. Like, offer, you know, the photographer's assistant water because you know they're sweating like a hooker in church over there. Like, you know, like, that stuff kind of goes a long way. The thing that I have to get over when people are rude to me is that's an insecurity thing for them. Like, that's an issue for them, and it's not really at me. But I will say when people are rude, I will say, hey, listen, you can't talk to people like that, you know? Like, it's just not a good look. If you want to be the bad guy, it's not hard to make you be the bad guy if you're saying and acting like that.
And I think also another weird work parallel you can take to bartending on Paradise is they have some little itty-bitty dotted line to you almost being like a boss, in my opinion. Like, and when I say that, like, you could have some little sort of impact of how things turn out for them, right? Like something, like you even said yourself, when you don't like someone, you might give them the wrong advice.
Yeah.
Do you think there's some truth to that? Like, the better you are to your boss, the better someone is to the bartender, the more likelihood of success they might have?
I think, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier to give bad advice to someone you hate. You know, like, it just really is.
Be hateable.
Yeah.
Don't be hateable.
But I guess just be like, you walk the fine line of like being fake. And I'm not fake. Like, I'm a genuinely nice person. I have my days where I'm like upset and stuff, and that's just fighting through that. And then like also knowing that like everyone else is dealing with their own bullshit, and you have to like give people grace and that kind of stuff. And the same thing with Paradise. People were on there and they're like, I haven't slept in 3 days, like I'm getting yelled at by so-and-so. Like, I know that they're going through a lot. And so I do give them a little bit of grace. But
like the radio world, you saw all different positions, right? From secretary all the way to the top. In the Bachelor world, you've now at least had vision to all positions, from being cast and interviewing with your flair to seeing the people at the top. Are there any other positions within this production, other than being the bartender, that you have your eyes set on in the future?
No. I mean, I think like my bid for the host of the show came and went, and so that's great and that's fine. I'm a fan of Jesse, still am. He's a great guy to work with. So I think now it's more of like, I want to keep doing what I'm doing in television, just expand it,
Yeah.
I love doing Paradise, and I hope I get to do it forever, but that's eventually going to end, and I just hope I can kind of continue on.
Do you know when it will end? Do you have a contract that says in 2025 it's up? Do you know anything like that?
This is my last contracted year, but
Which one? The one coming up?
yeah, but
So
also
you're doing it this year.
no, I don't, because it's they don't have to pick up my option.
Okay, so they have the option to contract you this year.
Yeah.
If they do pick it up, it's set at the rate that was already put in place.
Yeah.
And they could just cancel at any point without executing that
Yeah.
option. Got it. Once this contract's up, are you going to try and negotiate for like a larger, I don't know, either raise or time period or anything like that, or are you just up in the air with it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. One thing I was interested, I've talked to you behind the scenes about Instagram, and something I'm extremely open about talking about is the way I've monetized it.
Mm-hmm.
Every show I do one annual review. I talk about every penny I made on Instagram. I was shocked when you told me once, you go, hey, look at Instagram, especially with your engagement, your following and everything else. You're like, I look at Instagram as like little side money. It's like whatever, like I could do a deal and, maybe go on vacation. I was blown away by that, because if I look at all of my different businesses and stuff, I'd say definitely last year, Instagram had the highest profit margins. It was the largest dollar amount. Is that still your take on Instagram?
I mean, I agree with you that you can make a lot of money off of that stuff. My thing is that I just try not to do a lot of it. Because
So you're intentional about not trying to do
yes,
ads.
and like I have a manager obviously that brings me stuff, and we get into a lot of fights about. I'm like, no, we're not. There's enough, enough ads.
Do you have a rule? I only do one ad a month, or I'll only do one every 2 months. Do you have a rule of thumb like that?
My rule is I don't like when there's like 2 ads back to back on like my grid of pictures.
I agree with that. I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't do that.
Listen, I will concede that you can make a lot of money off of it. For me, I don't consider myself an influencer. I consider myself a personality and a host, of which I've been since I was 16 years old. This other thing is great, and it is side money, but like I think if were just doing social media stuff, I would feel not who I feel like I am, if that makes any sense.
So you look at your identity as you are in TV and you are a media personality, and you can make money influencing because of that.
Yeah.
But you are not an influencer in any shape or form.
No, but I think for me, the value of social media comes with its ability to help promote. So for me, it's a vehicle when I get, so like, let's say I'm in a room to get a job. Okay. Yes, I can read prompter. I can do anything with an in-ear. I'm really good, improv or whatever you guys need me to do. And also, I have a relatively large following that I can help promote this show. And so it's an intangible that I get to use as like a resume builder. And then when I do I did Best in Dough this past year on Hulu, which is a great little cooking show. And I was so proud to put out, effectively those are ads for free, but it was me promoting this show that I was really proud of that I worked on, you know?
Yeah.
And so I look at it that way. It's like, it's this opportunity to promote what I really am in my head, which is a host and a TV personality.
Okay, I love this.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's tangible or intangible, whether it's some type of like optimistic delusion or it's the reality, it's the Wells way and no one else's way.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this though. 2000, since you've been doing what you've been doing, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, you sit down with your accountant. Your accountant's doing all your financials. and they're looking at all your sources of income. Is it fair to say that social media influencing is usually a top source of income, or no?
Yeah, it's up there for sure. Yeah, it's pretty high up there, but I would say no. Like, I did 2 TV shows last year, and that was the bulk of like what I made.
And if that's the bulk now, I'm assuming that transition for you has flipped, right? Where it was influencing podcasting. You've now built such a strong brand. It's TV with influencing and podcasting below. And then your value, the host, like we had Rob Gronkowski on, he goes, yo, man, I made a lot of money in the NFL, $70 million, but that doesn't touch TV land. Like that TV money is different. I assume your trajectory is TV money is going to hopefully continue to move at a high pace, and the influencing and podcasting, there's going to be more separation. Does that look like your forecast?
And I think that's what I'm hoping for too.
Yeah.
That's what I'm striving for.
Okay.
And I also, there's also another thing that like, I haven't gotten into producing shows, but I eventually want to start doing that, whether that's with my wife or not. Like, there would be yes, I love being on camera because I do have an ego and stuff, but like, there would be it would be very gratifying to create something and be behind the scenes and make something.
Yeah.
You know?
So many options.
Yeah.
We just had Caitlin on for the 100th episode. One of the things we talked about was business and relationship. And she talked about how Sean, the last partner, there was a lot of emasculating, what you talked about, just based on her success versus his. And we brought it back to our relationship and talked about that. Professionally, do you feel any of that in your current relationship?
Of course. But also, like, I mean, like, I could be the next Ryan Seacrest, and I'm not sure if I would touch Sarah's success in terms of 11 seasons on Modern and, you know, Bumper in Berlin and Love Island. Like, that bitch fucking kills. So I at least know that, like, there's really nothing I can do to be able to, like, surpass her success and stuff. But then again, like, I go back to and that's, I'm sorry because this is your show, but like, we are so tied to the barometer for success is money.
Yeah.
And for me, it's not. Like,
I love that though. I think that's such a good perspective. What is it?
I think being really proud of the work that you do is really, really important. Because, like, I could go, case in point, I could go sell diarrhea tea and FabFitFun boxes and make so much fucking money.
$5 million a year all day.
And I would not be proud of myself. Like, I would not be proud of the work that I did. But if I go do like a small little Hulu show that like I think turned out to be really fun and funny and good, and I didn't make as much money, but I'm really proud of that thing, and I made enough money to live fine, and luckily my wife is very successful, so if things go bad, I'm sure she can help me out. But I think it's a slippery scale when you're only looking at bottom line of success being financial.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Yesterday, I talked to a guy who works for this company called On Location, and they host VIP experiences at every big event in the entire world. So he was at WrestleMania yesterday, fly last night to go to the Final Four, then goes to the Masters. I said, and he's like, oh, it's a grind. I'm like, but how cool is it? That you have a cool job that you get to do these exciting things and tell people about, and they want to hear about it. And he goes, I've never had anyone say that to me. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, but everyone wants to know more, because all of us, we're talking about us, all we want to know is more about his job, the next events he's going behind the scenes, etc. There is something to that whole thing.
For sure.
There is something to that.
I've always said, like, the biggest hack when it comes to work is to get people to let you, I mean, it's an old saying or what, like, do what you love and you don't have to work a day in your life. But like, that's all good. The hack is convincing people to pay you to do shit that you love.
Yeah.
And once you can do that, then it's like, man, this is great. Like, I love being in Mexico bartending. Like, it's the most fun freaking thing in the world. Like, I get to see the shit show unfold in front of me. I get to be kind of a part of storyline, and there's a little bit of me that's like, I can't believe they paid me to do this,
That's really cool. Let me ask you about this. There's tangibles and non-tangibles. We're wrapping up, so I got to ask it. because the whole second book I'm writing right now, it starts with a question. And the question is not objective, or it's not subjective, it's objective. It's a number. And it's talking about how in relationships these days, we talk about trauma, we talk about our past, we talk about history. We still have yet to get comfortable with the taboo subject of money and what it means in the relationship and what it means for a couple. So every chapter has a question. Like the first one's about what is your credit score? You have to talk about your credit score, your partner's credit score, what that means, how you can improve it, how not to leverage it against one another, etc. Do you and Sarah ever do anything like that? Like, do you guys talk about the money you make? Do you talk about how to manage it in a healthy manner? How to not let things like that, the success of one or the other, the ebbs and flows of your industry, throw your professions off or your finances off as a couple?
No, it's more of like we're good teammates. And so it really more of our conversations are, and she gets a lot of these offers more so than I do, would it be like, hey, I've been offered to do this thing for this amount of money.
Sure.
And then it's weighing the pros and cons of is this good for us? Is this good for your brand? Is all that kind of stuff. And then we kind of reverse engineer it back to like, okay, so if you go do this, what does this look like, and going backwards. But like, no, like I don't know what Sarah's credit score is. I don't think Sarah knows what Sarah's credit score is. She has a team of business managers who are dealing with that.
Yeah. Okay.
My business manager talks to her business manager, and that's how things work.
That's how it all works.
That's how
we
it
don't
all
talk
works.
to each other about it. All right.
I know we do talk about like, and it's tough when like the numbers that I'm offered are much different than the numbers she's being offered.
Sure.
But it's all relative. And so, yeah, so it's a lot of like, okay, is this good for us going forward?
Okay, interesting.
And also for us too, and for everybody, but especially for us, time is a commodity that's almost more valuable than actual cash because, you know, she does Bumper in Berlin, that's a 3-month shoot. She does Love Island, that's a 2-month shoot. So now we're talking about almost half the year she won't be around me. So like, what is the value of the next thing that take her away from our life here, and is it worth it for her to go do those things?
Yeah.
And same with me. Like Paradise is a month shoot. I was supposed to go do a thing in Toronto for like a couple months, and it was like, I don't know, man, because I'm not going to see you very much this year. This is our first year of marriage.
Yeah. I feel that, especially because I don't think you realize the toll it takes until it happens. But even like with Caitlin going on Dancing with the Stars tour, that, 3 months you're living by yourself, you're doing your own thing, you're like set up and now a new routine. And then after 3 months you come back together, and it's certainly not like starting over, but it definitely is a setback. Like at least for us it was. So when you start to weigh these things about taking 2-3 month gigs, at least for us, it changes a little bit. The one thing I got to ask you is about just the overall, like Caitlin has more everything than me, right? Like more fame, more success, more everything, more makes more.
Do you have a complex about it?
No, I don't.
Okay, good.
And I was going to ask kind of like, do you ever have a complex about it? And do you, if you do or don't, what advice do you have for someone back home where their partner might be in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that saying that I don't have, like it doesn't affect me, that would be a lie. Because I think we're all brought up in this, in this world where like the man is the provider and all this. That's so antiquated and stupid.
Yeah.
It kind of goes back to my delusional success. I'm always like, I'm great. Like I killed that. Like I do that with kind of comparing our careers. Like they're obviously completely different, and her skill set's different than mine. So no, I'm just really, really proud of her, and I think that if you can start having that feeling to replace like the jealousy, maybe is what the word is, or resentment or something of someone's success with like pride, and be like, dude, my bitch fucking kills, she rakes it in, she gets the bag, she is a boss. It was funny, we were talking about a Hall & Oates song came on, and she goes, if I could encapsulate
which song was it? It wasn't Rich Girl, was it?
No,
it's
it
my
wasn't Rich
favorite
Girl.
Old song.
Oh God, I gotta look it up. Anyways, it was, and she was like, if there was a song that I could say would encapsulate you, it's this Hall & Oates song. And I'm like, that's very, very odd. And she was like, so what song encapsulates me? And I was like, wow, that's a tough thing. And I came at her with, I think it would be Queen, Killer Queen. And she didn't like this at first. And she was like, why? And I was like, well, you are a Broadway kid. You're like classically trained singer. Like Freddie was an opera singer in a rock band. You also are an ally for like the LGBTQ. So like that also works.
Yeah.
But also like the song's about this badass bitch, you know, like who's having like people over and everyone loves her and is, you know, in awe of like her badassness. And then when I told her that, she was like, oh, okay. I like that being my energy or my song.
It all clicks.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. I think like there's always something that happens where you think about stuff. Like I think about what Caitlin's done in her lane and like just the empowerment she's had on people, and they'll come up to her, and I've seen people cry just being like, I heard there was one girl who said like, I was in a really dark place rethinking my life, and your advice and your show helped me bring out of that. And she just gave Caitlin a hug. And that was like one of the most beautiful things I'd seen. And then you walk away from that, and I am like, I said to Kay, I'm like, how amazing is that, right? But then like, let's say it's like 5 hours later and you're thinking about it. I'm thinking, am I doing enough in my lane to make an impact?
Yeah.
Am I doing enough to like actually change? So I start to think like that a little bit. Like maybe I'm not doing enough to like really change someone's whatever in my lane. I think through that a little bit. But I do agree. I think the advice out there is like I get so proud of her and I want to support her. I want to see if I truly, when she succeeds, I get so happy. I get fired up myself. So I think that's part of it, and that's just a huge part of the puzzle, and it's honestly just a beautiful thing, really.
Yeah, I would say that that's the most beneficial thing about getting married, aside from like the tax breaks or something. Is that you now have a teammate, like you have a partner, like they're in your corner. And I was asked this on carpets and stuff about like what's the best thing about being married, and I was like, oh, I have a teammate. And I know that's not romantic, but it's true. Like someone gets too drunk at a party, the other one's like, hey, time to go. Let's let's get you out of here.
Yeah.
Or like, I'm not sure if like this next gig is the best gig for you to do because it's on this network or whatever. Like little things and big things. It's so great to have someone to be able to lean on. And the second that you start like resenting somebody for their success, you're no longer a part of the team anymore. And her success is now my success, and vice versa.
Yeah. I think for richer, for poorer, for better, for worse, like, and that is a real thing, and that bleeds in. And when you have that teammate, it changes the world. And I also think you can tell. One thing I took away, career advice from Sarah's family, was you can tell she's a good teammate because she is. But also I got to talk to her dad a little bit at your wedding, and her dad talking about how his wife was so supportive of his decision to go into Broadway.
Yeah.
And he was telling they lived in this little itty bitty apartment, like you could barely move, and they were giving Sarah, baths in the sink and all these things.
300 square feet.
300 square feet. And you talked about like the commitment it took, but how it made their family happier, and it potentially helped Sarah with her career. And that's like when you have teammates, when you have partners, when you have parents and stuff that give you that support, it impacts the whole circle around you, the whole future of your friends, your family. And that's career advice that leaks into all balance of life. That like when I was talking to him there, I was blown away. Your wedding was amazing. Your life has been a beautiful, beautiful mosaic, a nice piece of art moving in all directions, all different colors, sizes, and scales, and it's going to continue to do so. Wells, this has been awesome. I could talk to you 2 more hours about all the other stuff, and I'm sorry to the money mafia out there that knows I might have missed a few things because there's just so much to talk about in so little time. We got to wrap with your trading secret. So one piece of advice, it could be financial advice, career navigation advice, life advice. You can't get in a textbook. You can't learn from a professor. You can't learn from your boss. You can only learn through Wells Adams and your wild story professionally and personally. So one trading secret, what could you leave us with?
Listen, I told you before coming on this, I was like, I'm not like a finance guy. Like, I'm not sure if I'm a very good guest for this. But okay, I'll give you 2 pieces of advice. The first one, I think this is a quote from Lex Luthor, so take it for what you will. It might be from somebody else, but buy land. It's the only thing they're not making any more of. I'm a firm believer in real estate. I think it's a pretty solid bet. And passive income is pretty freaking awesome.
That's good.
And then my second one is, and I said it earlier, it's really, really hard to fire the nicest guy in the office. And everyone should strive to be the nicest and best guy in the office because, one, you bring everyone's vibe up day in and day out. And, yeah, you know, like, what is it? Honey attracts more flies than vinegar. Like, just be the best guy you can be, or girl. And you'll be successful.
In that trading secret, you got anecdotes, you got metaphors, and you also got tangible financial advice. Wells, this has been an absolute pleasure. Where can people find everything that you have going on, your podcast, your shows, etc.?
Yeah, so I do a podcast with Brandy Cyrus. That's Miley's sister and Billy Ray's daughter. We have been doing that for 6 years now, and it's funny because back in my radio days, Brandy was a regular contributor on my show, on my pop show. We actually tried to get a syndicated radio show together, and iHeart turned it down. And we were like, well, screw it, we'll just do this podcast. So that we've been doing this forever, and that's called Your Favorite Thing Podcast. And it effectively is what my morning show was, but condensed down into 1 hour with a lot less music.
And when are episodes released for that show?
Every Wednesday on wherever you get your podcast. And it's effectively, it's our favorite things. When we decided to make the show, I think Miley was going through it on social media. I think I was getting a little bit of hate post-show, and we were like, let's just talk about the things that we love. Let's just be positive. So it's just things that we love. Music, books, TV, music, funny stories. The other show that I do is called Two Dudes in a Kitchen.
That's funny.
And it's me and Tyler Florence. I met Tyler Florence when I was filming Worst Cooks in America, which I won. And
not a big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. Beat out Johnny Bananas. Suck it, Johnny. And so now we do a podcast where basically I'm every man. I don't know everything about cooking. Obviously, Tyler does. He's, you know, an award-winning chef. And so it's just kind of us talking about cooking, navigating like Thanksgiving or like whatever, and then also like, hey, you're in Austin, these are the places you need to go. So if you're kind of a foodie or want to get into that foodie world, Two Dudes in a Kitchen's great.
Real quick, not to interrupt, I love the summary of that show. If you read the podcast summary, it talks about all of his awards and how famous he is as a chef, and it's like, and then we have Wells, the fake bartender, the worst cook in America. It's perfect.
Yeah. I maybe need to go edit that. I never even looked at that.
It's great.
That's good to know.
It's great.
And then, I host a cooking show called Best in Dough. It's on Hulu. You can watch all 10 episodes now, and it is about pizza makers. So if you love pizza or love food, go watch that. It's a really good show. There's a lot of cooking shows out there that are kind of, like you watch Gordon Ramsay, like he's mean, you know, or like Chopped, you know, like they can be kind of mean. Our show is very, very positive.
It's hilarious too.
Yeah,
I watched in prep for this. The Italian Grandma is my favorite. If you need a good laugh and just want an escape, it's a perfect show.
You're Italian, right?
Yeah, I got 1% in me.
Okay,
literally 1%. I swear to God,
you look very Italian.
I'll take it.
Anyways, that's a great episode, but it's a very positive cooking show. Go watch that. Obviously, Paradise airs every summer/fall now, and follow me on @WellsAdams.
Anything you can tease? Anything coming up or might happen? Like maybe a new show? You auditioning? Anything?
There are like 3 things in the fire.
Okay,
but nothing that is concrete.
More to come.
Yeah.
Well, guys, go listen to his podcast. Go follow him on social media. You will not get overburied with ads. We already know that. And Wells, thank you so much for being on this episode of Trading Secrets.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you too.